A millionaire's daughter screams and refuses the healthy food that her mother prepared, throwing the plate on the floor. When he arrives home earlier, he finds his wife and daughter crying together amid the chaos. It is in this devastating moment that he realizes the price of his absence and the collapse of his own family. What he decides to do next changes everything in a way that no one could have imagined. The familiar hum of the Bentley's engine died as Robert Maxwell turned off the ignition in the driveway of his Seattle mansion. He checked his watch, 3:15 p.m. For once, he was home early. The board meeting had concluded ahead of schedule, and against his usual instincts, he'd resisted the urge to return to TechVision's headquarters. Something had been nagging at him lately, a feeling he couldn't quite name. His 10,000-square-foot home stood imposingly against the backdrop of Lake Washington, a monument to his success. From humble beginnings in a small Ohio town, Robert had built TechVision into a tech empire valued at billions. At 45, he had everything money could buy, except time. Time had always been the one commodity he refused to waste on anything but business. As Robert entered through the grand foyer, he expected the usual silence that greeted him on the rare occasions he arrived home before 9 p.m. Instead, a child's shrill scream pierced the air, followed by the sound of shattering porcelain. "I hate it. I hate it." The voice belonged to his 8-year-old daughter, Emma. "I want McDonald's. I want pizza. I don't want this gross stuff." Robert followed the commotion to the kitchen, where he witnessed a scene that would forever alter the course of his life. Emma, red-faced and tearful, stood amid scattered pieces of what had once been a plate. A sandwich with whole-grain bread, avocado, and turkey lay in pieces on the marble floor. And there, sitting against the kitchen island with her head in her hands, was his wife Jennifer, silently sobbing. Jennifer didn't even notice his presence. Her designer clothes couldn't mask her exhaustion. The woman who had once run a thriving nutrition consultancy now looked defeated, broken by the daily battles with their increasingly difficult daughter. "Jenny?" Robert's voice sounded foreign even to himself, uncertain, a quality never associated with Robert Maxwell, CEO of TechVision. Jennifer's head snapped up, surprise momentarily replacing despair. "Robert, what are you doing home?" Before he could answer, Emma spotted him and her entire demeanor changed. "Daddy!" she squealed, carefully stepping around the mess she'd created to launch herself at him. "Mommy's trying to make me eat yucky food again. Can we order pizza, please?" Looking at his daughter's tear-streaked face, Robert saw not just a child having a tantrum, but a stranger. When had Emma become so entitled? When had his beautiful, once happy wife become this hollow-eyed woman sitting on the kitchen floor? And most troublingly, when had he stopped noticing? "Jenny, what's going on?" he asked, still holding Emma, who was now whispering "pizza, pizza" in his ear. "What's going on?" Jennifer's laugh was brittle. "This is what goes on every day, Robert. Every single day while you're building your empire, your daughter refuses to eat anything that doesn't come in a delivery box or a fast food bag. I've tried everything to get some nutrition into her, and this is what happens every single time." Robert set Emma down. "Princess, go to your room for a bit. Daddy needs to talk to Mommy." "But my iPad is out of battery," Emma pouted. "Emma, room now." The firmness in his voice surprised all three of them. Emma's lower lip trembled, but she turned and stomped away. Robert crouched down beside Jennifer, reaching to help her up. She flinched away from his touch. 8 months, she said quietly. "What?" "It's been 8 months since you've been home before dinner. 8 months since you've seen what our life is actually like." The accusation hit him like a physical blow. Had it really been that long? He mentally calculated. The Singapore expansion had begun in January, then the IPO preparations. My God, she was right. "Jenny, I'm sorry? Busy? Building a future for us?" "I've heard it all, Robert." Jennifer finally stood, brushing off her pants. "Do you know what Emma's teacher told me at the last parent-teacher conference? That Emma tells everyone her daddy lives in his office and only visits sometimes." Robert felt something crack inside him. "I didn't know." "You never asked." Jennifer began picking up the shattered pieces of plate. "You never ask about anything except whether I've RSVP'd to whatever charity gala benefits your networking goals." As Robert helped clean up the mess, memories flooded back. His own childhood in a small apartment above his parents' struggling hardware store. His father working 16-hour days, barely acknowledging his existence. The promised fishing trips that never materialized. The school events attended by an empty chair. The determination young Robert had felt, to be successful, yes, but also to be different from his father. Yet here he was, worse than his father had ever been. At least his dad had been physically present, even if emotionally distant. Robert had managed to fail on both counts. "Jenny," he said finally, "I need to tell you something." Jennifer looked up, wariness in her eyes. "I've been having these dreams about my grandparents' farm, where I spent those summers as a kid before they sold it and moved to Florida." "What about it?" "I looked it up last month. It's for sale again." Robert hadn't told anyone about this, not even himself fully. "I've been thinking about buying it." Jennifer stared at him. "Why would you buy a farm?" "I work 100 hours a week running a tech company." "That's just it." Robert took a deep breath. "What if I didn't?" The silence that followed felt electric. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows, a familiar Seattle soundtrack. "What are you saying, Robert?" Jennifer's voice was barely audible. "I'm saying I want to sell my controlling shares in Tech Vision. I want to buy my grandparents' farm in Vermont. I want us, you, me, and Emma, to move there and—" "Start over." Jennifer's eyes widened. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." And as he said it, Robert realized it was true. The idea that had been germinating in his subconscious for months suddenly crystallized into perfect clarity. "I don't want Emma to grow up thinking her father lives in his office. I don't want to be 65 with billions in the bank and a family of strangers." Jennifer shook her head slowly. "You can't just decide something like this unilaterally. You can't completely upend our lives because you had a moment of guilt, Robert. That's not how this works." "Then how does it work, Jenny?" "Because this," he gestured around the immaculate designer kitchen at the broken plate at the space between them, "isn't working. You know it. I know it now too." Before Jennifer could respond, Emma appeared at the kitchen entrance. "Are you guys fighting?" Robert and Jennifer exchanged a look. In that moment, Robert saw something in his wife's eyes. Beneath the hurt and the exhaustion, a flicker of the woman he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. The passionate nutritionist who'd once dreamed of revolutionizing how America ate before she'd set it all aside to become Mrs. Robert Maxwell. "No, sweetie," Jennifer said. "Daddy and I are just talking about some big ideas." "Like what?" Emma asked, suspicious. Robert made a decision. "Like whether you'd like to see some real cows and chickens instead of just pictures in books." Emma's nose wrinkled. "Real animals are smelly." "Sometimes," Robert acknowledged. "But they're also pretty amazing." The news spread through Tech Vision's gleaming headquarters like wildfire. Robert Maxwell, the company's founder, visionary, and driving force, was stepping down. Not for a competitor, not for a startup, but for a farm. The press release had been clinical, to pursue personal interests and spend time with family. The tech blogs were less restrained, headlines screaming about midlife crises and burnout. In the 3 weeks since that fateful afternoon in the kitchen, Robert had moved with the same decisive efficiency that had built his empire. He'd negotiated the sale of his controlling shares to a consortium led by his COO, ensuring Tech Vision's future while extracting himself from daily operations. He'd purchased the 75-acre farm in the Green Mountains of Vermont, a sight unseen except for digital photos and his childhood memories. Now, standing in their Seattle bedroom watching Jennifer pack, Robert felt the first real tremors of doubt. "Do you think I've lost my mind?" he asked suddenly. Jennifer paused, a folded sweater in her hands. "Honestly, a month ago I would have said yes." She placed the sweater in the suitcase. "Now I'm not so sure." Her response surprised him. Since his announcement, Jennifer had been quietly cooperative but emotionally distant. This was the first hint that she might not be merely humoring him. "You haven't seemed very enthusiastic about the move," he ventured. Jennifer sat on the edge of the bed. "Because you didn't ask me, Robert. You decided, just like you decided where we'd live when we got married. Just like you decided I'd quit my practice when Emma was born, even though I wanted to continue part-time." The accusations stung, partly because he knew it was true. "I thought I was doing what was best for us." "No," Jennifer corrected gently. "You were doing what was easiest for you. Having me manage the household meant you never had to think about it." Robert wanted to defend himself, but found he couldn't. Instead, he asked, "Then why are you going along with this?" Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "Because despite everything, I still remember why I fell in love with you. Because Emma needs her father, and because—" She hesitated. "I need a change too." Something in her tone made Robert look more closely at his wife. At 42, Jennifer was still beautiful, but he noticed now the unusual pallor beneath her makeup, the way her clothes hung a little looser than they once had. "Jenny, are you okay?" "Health-wise, I mean." The question seemed to catch her off guard. "Why do you ask?" "You've lost weight, and sometimes when you don't know I'm watching, you look in pain." Jennifer's eyes dropped to her hands. "I was going to tell you after we settled in Vermont." She took a deep breath. "I've been having problems for a while now. Chest pain, fatigue. I finally saw Dr. Levine last month." Fear gripped Robert's heart. "And?" "It's not what you're thinking. It's not cancer or anything like that." Jennifer twisted her wedding ring. "It's stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Basically, my heart has been weakened by chronic stress. The doctor called it broken heart syndrome, if you can believe it." Robert felt the floor tilt beneath him. "Jenny, my God, why didn't you tell me?" "When, Robert?" "During the 5-minute phone calls between your meetings, or the nights you came home after I was asleep." There was no accusation in her voice, just tired facts. "Besides, the treatment is lifestyle change. Less stress. Better diet, more rest. Things I couldn't do in our life as it was." Robert crossed the room and knelt before his wife, taking her hands in his. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "I know you didn't." Jennifer squeezed his hands. "That's part of the problem. We've been living separate lives under the same roof. So yes, maybe this crazy farm idea is exactly what we need." The sound of a door slamming interrupted them. Emma stomped into their bedroom, face stormy. "Amber says I'm going to have to milk cows and collect eggs and get all dirty," she declared, referring to her best friend from school. "She says there's no internet on farms and all my followers will forget about me." At 8 years old, Emma had already amassed a concerning social media, following on a kid-friendly platform where she unboxed luxury toys and modeled designer children's clothes, all managed by the succession of nannies Robert and Jennifer had employed. "That's not true." "Emma," Jennifer assured her, "the farm has internet. It's not the Stone Age." "But it won't be as fast as here," Emma pouted. "And Amber says there won't be any good stores, and I'll have to wear overalls and straw hats like some farmer." Robert suppressed a smile. Would that be so terrible? "Yes." Emma flopped dramatically onto their bed. "Why can't we just stay here?" "Daddy, you could work less. You promised you would. We don't have to move to a stupid farm." Robert exchanged a glance with Jennifer. "Emma, do you remember last summer when we went to Hawaii and you were excited to see the beach?" Emma nodded reluctantly. "But then you were scared of the ocean at first, remember? You thought the waves would be too big and the sand too hot." "I was just a kid then," Emma protested. "It was 8 months ago." "Sweetie," Jennifer pointed out gently. "Anyway," Robert continued, "you were scared, but once you tried it, you loved it so much you cried when we had to leave. This might be like that. Something new and a little scary that turns out to be wonderful." Emma looked unconvinced. "Can I at least bring all my toys?" "We'll bring what matters most," Jennifer said diplomatically. "But the farm has a whole forest to play in, and animals and a lake for swimming in summer." "A lake?" Emma perked up slightly. "Is it big?" "Big enough for a small boat," Robert confirmed, remembering lazy summer days fishing with his grandfather. "And there are trails for hiking and trees perfect for climbing." "I don't know how to climb trees," Emma said, a hint of curiosity breaking through her resistance. "I'll teach you," Robert promised. "I was the best tree climber in Vermont when I was your age." For the first time since the announcement, Emma smiled tentatively. "Pinky, promise you'll teach me?" Robert linked his pinky with his daughter's tiny one. "Pinky, promise." After Emma left to continue packing her room, now marginally less reluctant, Jennifer gave Robert a measured look. "You're really serious about this, aren't you? It's not just a reaction to seeing me and Emma that day in the kitchen?" Robert sat beside her on the bed. "That day was my wake-up call, but I think this has been coming for a long time. When I was building TechVision, I thought I was creating our future. But somewhere along the way I forgot to actually live in the present with you and Emma. Jennifer leaned against him slightly, the first voluntary physical contact she'd initiated in months. I'm still not sure this will work. I'm a city girl, remember? The closest I've come to farming is shopping at the organic section at Whole Foods. My grandparents will be rolling in their graves, Robert chuckled. They tried to teach me everything about that land, and I couldn't wait to escape to the city. Now here I am, dragging my city family back to the country. Life has a strange way of coming full circle, Jennifer mused. Speaking of which, I found something you should see. She crossed to her dresser and withdrew an envelope from the top drawer. Inside was a folded piece of paper, medical letterhead. My latest test results, she explained. Dr. Levine says, if I make the changes she's recommending, there's no reason I can't make a full recovery. But if I don't... She let the implication hang in the air. Robert felt a renewed surge of determination. Then we're definitely doing this. Tech vision be damned. As they resumed packing, Robert found himself filled with an unfamiliar emotion. It took him a moment to identify it. Hope. For the first time in years, he was moving towards something. Not just driving himself relentlessly forward to escape the poverty of his childhood. Outside, Seattle's perpetual rain had given way to a rare, clear evening. Through the window, Robert could see the distant silhouette of Mount Rainier against the darkening sky. He'd been too busy to notice such things for years. Maybe, he thought, it was time to start paying attention again. The Maxwell family's sleek Range Rover looked absurdly out of place on the rutted dirt road, leading to what Robert had been calling the property in his mind. After a cross-country journey, first-class flights to Burlington, followed by a 2-hour drive into increasingly rural territory, they were finally approaching their new home. Are we there yet? Emma asked for the dozenth time, looking up from her tablet with a mix of boredom and apprehension. Almost, sweetheart, Jennifer replied, her own voice tight with unspoken anxiety. As they rounded the final bend, the farmhouse came into view. Robert felt a strange sensation in his chest, part nostalgia, part trepidation. The 2-story white clapboard house with its wraparound porch was exactly as he remembered, yet somehow smaller. The red barn behind it needed paint, and the fields that stretched toward distant mountains were overgrown. That's it? Emma's voice dripped with disappointment. It looks old. It is old, Robert confirmed, putting the car in park. It was built in 1902. Your great-great-grandfather built it with his own hands. Why didn't he just hire people to build it? Emma asked, genuinely confused. Robert and Jennifer exchanged glances. Things were different back then, Jennifer explained. People made things themselves more often. They sat in the idling car for a moment, taking in their new reality. Then Robert noticed something unexpected. Smoke rising from the farmhouse chimney. That's strange, he murmured. The realtor said the place had been vacant since the last owners foreclosed. Before Jennifer could respond, the farmhouse door opened and a man stepped onto the porch. He was roughly Robert's age, dressed in worn jeans and a flannel shirt, his expression watchful as he observed their vehicle. Stay here, Robert instructed his family, cutting the engine. As Robert approached the house, he noted other signs of habitation he'd missed initially, curtains in the windows, a garden hose coiled neatly against the foundation, a split wood pile stacked on the porch. Can I help you? The man called, making no move to come down the steps. I'm Robert Maxwell. I recently purchased this property. He extended his hand, businessman habits dying hard. The man hesitated before accepting the handshake. Nathan Cooper. My family's been caretaking this place for the past few years. Robert frowned. Caretaking? The bank didn't mention any arrangement when I bought the property. Wouldn't expect them to. Nathan's voice held a hint of bitterness. It was an agreement between my father and your grandfather. Handshake deal back when that still meant something. Robert was momentarily stunned. Your father knew my grandfather. Nathan nodded. Daniel Maxwell, good man. He helped my dad get started farming when no bank would give him the time of day. When your grandparents moved to Florida, they arranged for us to work this land, maintain the property. 20% of profits to them, the rest to us. I didn't know, Robert admitted. His grandparents had rarely discussed business matters with him. Despite his youthful interest, way I heard it, the bank didn't much care about oral agreements when they foreclosed. Nathan's eyes drifted to the Range Rover where Jennifer and Emma remained. "That's your family," Robert nodded. "My wife Jennifer and daughter Emma." "You planning to sell to developers?" Nathan asked bluntly. "There's been talk in town about some resort company buying up properties around here." "No, nothing like that. Robert hesitated, suddenly hearing how absurd it would sound. "We're moving here. To live." Nathan's eyebrows rose. "City folks looking to play farmer." The condescension in his tone sparked a flare of irritation in Robert. "This was my grandparents' farm before it was your family's arrangement. I spent every summer here until I was 16. It's not exactly foreign territory to me." The farmhouse door opened again, and a woman with honey blonde hair pulled into a practical braid stepped out. "Everything okay, Nate?" Her curious gaze shifted between the two men. "Just getting acquainted with the new owner," Nathan replied, emphasizing the last word slightly. The woman's expression fell. "Oh, I see." She joined Nathan on the porch. "I'm Sarah Cooper. We didn't expect you so soon. We were planning to be out by the end of the week." Robert realized they believed he was there to evict them. "I'm not here to force you out today. I didn't even know anyone was living here." By now, Jennifer had apparently grown tired of waiting in the car. She approached with Emma trailing reluctantly behind, clutching her tablet like a shield. "Hi," Jennifer offered with a tentative smile. "I'm Jennifer Maxwell, and this is our daughter Emma." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Nice to meet you. Do you folks have a place to stay tonight? It'll take us a day or two to pack up properly." "We were planning to stay here," Jennifer admitted, looking to Robert with confusion. An awkward silence descended, broken by the sound of children's laughter from behind the house. Moments later, two children raced around the corner, a boy of about 12 and a girl who looked to be Emma's age. "Mom, Dad, the chickens are—" The girl skidded to a halt when she noticed the visitors. "Who are they?" "Lily, Michael, these are the Maxwells," Sarah explained. They've purchased the farm." The children's expressions immediately fell. The boy looked stricken. "We have to leave?" "But what about our—" "We'll discuss it later," Nathan cut him off firmly. Emma, who had been sulking behind Jennifer, suddenly perked up at the sight of children her own age. "You have chickens?" she asked Lily directly. Lily nodded solemnly. 12 hens and a rooster named General Cluck." Despite herself, Emma giggled. "That's a funny name." "Do you want to see them?" Lily offered cautiously. Emma looked up at Jennifer, who nodded her permission. The two girls disappeared around the side of the house, Emma already peppering Lily with questions. "Look," Robert said, facing the Coopers, "there's obviously been a misunderstanding. Why don't we all go inside and talk this through?" Inside, the farmhouse was modestly but comfortably furnished, with well-worn furniture that Robert didn't recognize from his childhood visits. Sarah made coffee while the adults gathered around the kitchen table, its scarred wooden surface telling decades of stories. "So you really plan to live here?" Nathan asked, still sounding skeptical. "What exactly do you do, Mr. Maxwell?" "Until recently I ran a technology company," Robert replied. "But I'm taking a break from that world." Robert sold his company to focus on family, Jennifer elaborated. "We needed a change." Sarah studied them thoughtfully. "That's quite a change from corporate life to farming." "The timing seemed right," Jennifer said, her hand unconsciously moving to her chest. The gesture Robert had noticed more frequently since her diagnosis. A loud squeal from outside drew their attention. Through the kitchen window, they could see Emma chasing a chicken across the yard, her tablet abandoned on a tree stump, Lily laughing beside her. "That's the first time I've seen her without that tablet in months," Jennifer murmured. "Your girl's never collected eggs before, has she?" Sarah asked with a knowing smile. Jennifer shook her head. "Emma's experience with food mostly involves refusing to eat anything that doesn't come in a wrapper. I used to be a nutritionist, if you can believe the irony." "Used to be?" Sarah inquired. "I gave it up when Emma was born." Jennifer's tone was carefully neutral, but Robert heard the unspoken regret. "Well," Nathan said, setting down his coffee mug decisively, "as I see it, we've got two options here. Either we pack up and leave the land my family's worked for 3 generations, or—" He eyed Robert speculatively. "We figure out some arrangement that benefits us both." "What kind of arrangement?" Robert asked. "You own the property, no disputing that. But we know this land. What grows best where, the temperament of the soil, the weather patterns. You'd be starting from scratch without that knowledge. Robert considered this. Are you proposing a partnership? More like the arrangement we had with your grandfather. We work the land, maintain the property, share the profits. You and your family can live in the main house. We've been using the caretaker's cottage anyway. Robert found himself intrigued by the proposal. It would solve the immediate problem of his family's complete lack of farming experience, while still allowing them the lifestyle change they sought. "Where is this cottage?" he asked. "About a quarter-mile through those trees," Nathan pointed out the window. "It's small but comfortable. 3 bedrooms. Good solid construction." Before Robert could respond, the back door burst open and Emma rushed in, her designer jeans smeared with dirt, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom! Dad, I got an egg! A real one right from under the chicken!" She proudly held up a brown egg as if it were a precious gem. "And Lily says there's baby goats in the barn that I can help feed, and a treehouse that her dad built, and..." She suddenly seemed to realize the adults were in a serious conversation. "Sorry," she said, her enthusiasm dimming. "Am I interrupting?" "Not at all, sweetheart," Jennifer assured her. "It sounds like you're having fun." "Lily's really nice," Emma confided. "She knows how to do all sorts of cool things. She's going to teach me how to make a flower crown tomorrow." Her expression fell. "If we're still here tomorrow." Robert looked at his daughter, truly looked at her, and saw something he hadn't seen in too long, genuine childlike joy. He turned back to Nathan. "I think we might be able to work something out." The first month on the farm passed in a blur of adjustments. For Robert, the transition from 16-hour workdays in climate-controlled offices to the unpredictable rhythm of rural life was both jarring and strangely liberating. His designer suits hung untouched in the cedar closet upstairs, replaced by jeans and flannel shirts purchased during a hasty trip to the nearest department store. The arrangement with the Coopers had evolved organically. Nathan taught Robert the fundamentals of the farm's operation, from the ancient but reliable irrigation system to the temperamental tractor that required a specific sequence of actions to start. Sarah took Jennifer under her wing, showing her the extensive vegetable gardens that supplied not only their families, but also several local restaurants with seasonal produce. The most remarkable transformation, however, was Emma's. The child who had once thrown tantrums over organic sandwiches now eagerly devoured Sarah's homemade bread, topped with goat cheese from the farm's small dairy operation. Her tablet gathered dust as she spent her days shadowing Lily Cooper, collecting eggs, helping with the goats, and exploring the woods surrounding the property. This particular morning, Robert woke before dawn, something that had once been routine in his corporate life, but for entirely different reasons. He quietly slipped out of bed, leaving Jennifer sleeping peacefully. The circles under her eyes had begun to fade, and color had returned to her cheeks. The cardiologist in Burlington, whom they'd visited twice since arriving, had been cautiously optimistic about her progress. Robert made his way downstairs and started the coffee maker, one of the few modern conveniences he'd insisted on bringing from Seattle. As the coffee brewed, he stepped onto the porch, breathing in the crisp Vermont air. The mountains in the distance were shrouded in mist, the fields still shadowed in pre-dawn light. "Morning," came Nathan's voice as he approached from the direction of the caretaker's cottage. "You're up early." "Old habits," Robert replied, raising his coffee mug in greeting. "What's on the agenda today?" "Thought we'd check the north field irrigation. If the weather holds, we should start planning the fall planting rotation." Nathan accepted the mug of coffee Robert offered. "Also found something you might be interested in while I was clearing out the old storage shed." "Oh?" Robert had been gradually exploring the outbuildings, uncovering forgotten tools and equipment from his grandparents' era. Nathan nodded toward his truck. "In the back. Box of your grandfather's papers. Farming journals mostly. Some correspondence." After breakfast, Robert carried the dusty cardboard box to the porch swing and began sifting through the contents. The journals were meticulously kept records of planting times, yields, weather patterns, and soil conditions dating back to the 1960s. But what caught Robert's attention was a faded folder labeled Organic Certification Initiative. Inside were detailed plans for converting the entire farm to organic production years before the practice became mainstream. There were letters from agricultural extension offices rejections from traditional banks for loans to support the transition, and finally, a handwritten note dated 1978 that made Robert's breath catch. After much prayer and consideration, his grandfather had written, "We've decided to proceed with full organic conversion, despite institutional resistance. The chemical companies and their banking allies may control agricultural policy, but they don't control this land. If we're to leave any legacy to Robert and future generations, it must be soil unspoiled by what they're calling modern farming methods." Robert was still absorbing this revelation when Jennifer joined him on the porch, wrapped in a cardigan against the morning chill. "What's all this?" she asked, peering over his shoulder. "My grandfather's records." Robert handed her the note. Turns out he was an organic farming pioneer. The very thing you spent years advocating for in your nutrition practice. Jennifer read the note, her expression softening. "Jai sounds like he was ahead of his time. He was trying to build something sustainable," Robert mused, "and I never knew. All those summers I spent here, bored and impatient to get back to civilization, he was fighting a revolution on this land." "Like grandfather, like grandson," Jennifer teased gently, both stubborn and determined to change things. Before Robert could respond, the sound of tires on gravel announced an unexpected visitor. A sleek black SUV pulled up beside Nathan's weathered truck, looking as out of place as the Maxwell's Range Rover had that first day. A man in an expensive suit emerged, his polished loafers immediately gathering dust from the driveway. He surveyed the property with the calculating gaze of someone assessing value rather than beauty. "Can I help you?" Robert called, moving down the porch steps. The man turned, professional smile immediately in place. "I'm looking for Robert Maxwell." "You found him." A flicker of surprise crossed the man's face. "Mr. Maxwell, Gregory Harrington, Pinnacle Resorts." He extended a manicured hand. "I must say you're not easy to track down these days." Robert shook his hand briefly. "I'm not trying to be found, Mr. Harrington. What can I do for you?" "I was hoping to discuss a business opportunity regarding this property." Harrington's gaze swept over the farmhouse and surrounding land. "Pinnacle is developing a luxury eco-resort in this region, and your parcel would be a valuable addition to our project." Jennifer had joined Robert in the yard, her expression guarded. "Our farm isn't for sale." Harrington smiled indulgently. "Mrs. Maxwell, I understand the sentimental attachment, but perhaps you'd at least like to hear the offer before deciding. We're prepared to be quite generous." "The answer is still no," Robert stated firmly. "This land isn't going to become a playground for the wealthy." Harrington's smile tightened. "With all due respect, Mr. Maxwell, you are the wealthy, or were until your unconventional career move." His tone suggested he found Robert's choices baffling. "Our development would bring jobs and economic growth to a region that desperately needs it." "We're not interested," Jennifer insisted. "I'll leave my card," Harrington said, undeterred. "The offer stands. In fact, I'll be in town through the weekend for the Harvest Festival. Perhaps you'll reconsider after you've had time to think it over." After Harrington departed, Robert found himself unsettled. "How did he even find us?" "Small town," Nathan commented, having approached during the conversation. "Word travels fast when a tech millionaire buys a farm. Been meaning to tell you. There's been talk about Pinnacle buying up properties around here for months." "That's what you asked me about the first day," Robert recalled. "Whether I was planning to sell to developers." Nathan nodded. "They've already acquired the old Miller place and the Johnsons' land on the ridge. Been putting pressure on everyone else. Some folks are holding out, others are tempted by the money." "But this is prime agricultural land," Jennifer protested. "It should be used for farming, not golf courses and spas." "Preaching to the choir, Mrs. Maxwell," Nathan agreed. "But when you're a family that's been scraping by for generations, a big check starts to look mighty appealing." The conversation was interrupted by excited voices as Emma and Lily raced toward them from the direction of the barn, followed by Sarah and Michael Cooper. "Dad, Mom, guess what?" Emma called breathlessly. "There's going to be a harvest festival in town tomorrow, with a pie contest and square dancing and everything. Can we go, please? Mrs. Cooper says they have the best caramel apples in Vermont," Lily added. Robert and Jennifer exchanged glances. "I think that sounds like fun," Jennifer said. "Lily says I can enter the pie contest with her," Emma continued excitedly. Mrs. Cooper's going to teach us how to make her special apple pie recipe that won 3 years in a row. You want to bake? Jennifer asked, unable to mask her surprise. Their Seattle kitchen had gone largely unused except for the occasional bowl of cereal. Emma nodded enthusiastically. Lily says I can pick the apples myself from the orchard. Did you know we have an orchard, Dad? With like 1 million different kinds of apples. Slight exaggeration, Sarah laughed. But we do have 7 varieties, all heritage. Daniel, your grandfather, was passionate about preserving old apple types that were falling out of commercial production. Another piece of the puzzle. That was his grandfather's legacy fell into place for Robert. I'd like to see this orchard. Sarah led them through a meadow behind the barn to a gentle slope where gnarled apple trees stood in irregular rows. Some were heavy with fruit in various stages of ripeness, from green to blush to deep red. Your grandfather called this his living museum, Sarah explained. These are varieties that have nearly disappeared from commercial cultivation. Northern Spy, Roxbury Russet, Black Oxford. Some of these trees are over 100 years old. Robert reached up to touch a low-hanging fruit, marveling at the connection to his ancestors that he'd never fully appreciated. And they still produce? Absolutely. We sell to specialty markets, farm-to-table restaurants and hard cider makers who appreciate the complex flavors of heritage varieties. Can I try one? Emma asked, eyeing a particularly ruby-red apple. Of course, Sarah smiled. That's a Baldwin, sweet with a hint of spice. Emma reached for the apple, but it was just beyond her grasp. Without hesitation, Robert lifted her onto his shoulders, something he couldn't remember ever doing before. Emma giggled with delight as she plucked the fruit and took a bite. It's yummy, she declared, juice dribbling down her chin. Nothing like the ones from the store. That's because it was allowed to ripen naturally on the tree, Sarah explained. Most commercial apples are picked early and ripened artificially with ethylene gas. Ethyl what? Emma asked around another bite. It's a chemical that makes fruit look ripe even when it isn't, Jennifer explained, accepting a slice of apple that Emma offered. I used to teach my nutrition clients about this. Is that why store apples sometimes taste like nothing? Emma asked thoughtfully. Jennifer looked surprised at her daughter's insight. Exactly. Real flavor comes from natural ripening, which takes time. As they walked back toward the house, Robert pulled Nathan aside. This harvest festival tomorrow, how important is it to the community? It's tradition, Nathan replied. Celebrates the end of summer growing season, brings the whole county together. Local businesses depend on it for a good chunk of their annual revenue. Robert nodded thoughtfully. And I'm guessing Pinnacle's Mr. Harrington isn't attending just for the caramel apples. Not likely, Nathan agreed grimly. Word is they're planning to make a big announcement. Some kind of community partnership that's really just a PR move to soften opposition to their development. Robert felt a familiar, strategic mindset clicking into place, the same one that had built TechVision into a tech giant. Then I think it's time for a counter move. Millfield's town square had been transformed for the annual Harvest Festival. Strings of lights crisscrossed overhead. Booths lined the perimeter, selling everything from hand-knit scarves to maple syrup, and a makeshift stage hosted local musicians playing folk tunes. The air was perfumed with the scent of kettle corn, apple cider, and wood smoke from the massive barbecue pit, where volunteers turned spits of roasting meat. The Maxwell family arrived with the Coopers, Emma and Lily carrying their carefully prepared apple pies for the contest. Emma had barely slept the night before, too excited about her first baking endeavor. The pie wasn't picture perfect. The crust edges were uneven and a bit of filling had bubbled over one side, but she carried it like a precious artifact. Do you think it has a chance, Mom? Emma asked anxiously as they approached the judging tent. It's not about winning, sweetheart, Jennifer began diplomatically. Actually, Sarah interjected with a wink, I think you and Lily might surprise everyone. That Heritage Baldwin Roxbury Russet blend is my secret weapon. As the girls went to register their entries, Jennifer squeezed Sarah's arm gratefully. Thank you for this. I've tried for years to get Emma interested in food beyond chicken nuggets and pizza. Sometimes children need to connect with where their food comes from, Sarah replied. It's hard to appreciate something when it just appears in plastic packaging. They wandered through the festival, greeting neighbors whom the Maxwells were slowly getting to know. Robert was struck by how many people called him by name, nodding in friendly recognition. In Seattle, he could walk entire city blocks without a single person making eye contact. Mr. Maxwell, a weathered man in overalls, approached, hand extended. Tom Peterson, my family's farm borders yours to the east. Been meaning to stop by and introduce myself. Please call me Robert, he replied, shaking the man's hand. Wanted to thank you for not selling to those pinnacle vultures, Peterson continued. Gives the rest of us some backbone to hold out too. We're not selling, Robert confirmed, though I hear they're making quite a push. Peterson nodded grimly. They're hosting some fancy presentation at the town hall at noon, promising jobs and tourism dollars. Lot of folks here are struggling, might be tempted. Robert checked his watch. 11:30. I think I'll attend this presentation. Jennifer, would you mind? Go, she assured him. The pie judging isn't for another hour. We'll find you after. The town hall was a stately brick building facing the square. Inside, the meeting room was already filling with locals, a mix of farmers in practical clothing and business owners in slightly more formal attire. At the front, Gregory Harrington and several associates were setting up a sleek digital presentation that looked incongruously high-tech in the historic space. Robert slipped into a seat in the back row, observing. He recognized the presentation format immediately. He'd used similar tactics when pitching tech vision to potential investors. Appeal to the dream, minimize the downsides, promise the world. Harrington was smooth, professional, and persuasive. Pinnacle eco-resorts represent the future of sustainable tourism, he explained to the gathered crowd. We're not talking about paving paradise. We're talking about controlled access to natural beauty, preservation of key ecological features, and economic revitalization. The accompanying slides showed tasteful wooden structures nestled among trees, smiling staff members serving guests, and charts depicting projected economic impact. 500 jobs, Harrington claimed, a 15% increase in regional tax revenue, partnerships with local businesses. And for those concerned about agricultural heritage, Harrington continued, seeming to look directly at Robert, our plans include a demonstration farm where guests can experience Vermont's rural traditions firsthand. A murmur ran through the crowd, some approving, others skeptical. Now, we understand change can be concerning, Harrington acknowledged smoothly, but we're committed to being good neighbors. That's why Pinnacle is announcing today a community development fund of $5 million to support local initiatives. The announcement had its intended effect. $5 million in a community where many families struggled to make ends meet was a powerful incentive. Robert could see the calculus happening in people's expressions, weighing tradition against financial security, heritage against opportunity. When Harrington opened the floor for questions, a woman in her 60s stood. I've lived here my whole life, she began. My concern is that once you buy up all this farmland, it's gone forever. You can't put the soil back once you've built on it. A valid concern, Harrington nodded respectfully. Our development plans actually only utilize about 30% of the acquired land. The rest remains green space. Green space isn't the same as working farms, another voice called out. We understand that, Harrington replied. But we have to ask ourselves, what's the future of this community? Tourism is a growth industry. Traditional farming, unfortunately, is not. Robert had heard enough. He stood and heads turned as people recognized him. Despite his casual clothing, there was something about his bearing that commanded attention, the result of years presenting to boards and investors. Mr. Maxwell, Harrington acknowledged with a tight smile. Did you have a question? Not a question, Robert replied evenly. A correction. You said traditional farming isn't a growth industry. That depends entirely on how you define traditional. He moved to the front of the room, decades of public speaking giving him a natural confidence. My grandfather, Daniel Maxwell, kept detailed records of this farm's operations for over 40 years. What I discovered in those records is that he was practicing organic, sustainable agriculture decades before it became trendy. Robert turned to address the room directly. The future isn't in turning productive farmland into playgrounds for the wealthy. It's in reconnecting people with where their food comes from. It's in preserving heritage varieties of fruits and vegetables that are disappearing from the commercial food system. It's in building resilient local economies that don't depend on the whims of outside corporations. That's a lovely sentiment, Harrington interjected. But sentiment doesn't create jobs or pay mortgages. You're right, Robert agreed, which is why I'm announcing today the formation of the Maxwell Cooper Heritage Foods Initiative. Our vision is to expand beyond our farm to create a cooperative of local producers practicing sustainable agriculture, with guaranteed purchase agreements from premium markets that I have connections to through my previous business. A ripple of interest moved through the room. Robert continued, and for those farms that join our cooperative, we'll provide interest-free transition loans for those wishing to obtain organic certification, funded by a $10 million commitment from my family foundation. The announcement sent a shockwave through the assembly. $10 million was double what Pinnacle had offered, and directed specifically at preserving the agricultural character of the region. Mr. Maxwell, the town mayor, spoke up. This is the first we're hearing of this proposal. Do you have any specifics to share? My partner Nathan Cooper and I will be hosting an informational session next week, Robert replied. But the basic concept is simple. We pool resources, share knowledge, market collectively, and preserve both the land and the agricultural traditions of this community. Harrington's professional facade cracked slightly. While Mr. Maxwell's impromptu announcement is certainly interesting, I would caution everyone to remember that he's a technology executive playing farmer. Pinnacle has a proven track record of successful developments across the country. Actually, came Jennifer's voice from the doorway, my husband grew up working this land every summer, and I'm a certified nutritionist, specializing in farm-to-table connections. She moved to join Robert at the front. Also, I believe congratulations are in order. For what? Robert asked, confused. Jennifer's smile was radiant. Our daughter just won the junior division of the pie contest. She's outside with her blue ribbon. So waiting to tell you. The meeting dissolved into congratulations and conversations as people approached Robert and Jennifer with questions about their proposed cooperative. Harrington and his associates packed up their presentation in stony silence. Outside, Emma was indeed waiting, blue ribbon pinned proudly to her shirt, Lily beside her with a matching ribbon. Dad, we won, Emma exclaimed, throwing herself into Robert's arms. The judges said our apples had complex flavor notes, and the crust was beautifully rustic. That's amazing, sweetheart. Robert swung her around, her joy infectious. I'm so proud of you. Can we celebrate? Emma asked. Mrs. Cooper says there's square dancing later. Absolutely, Jennifer agreed. This is definitely a day worth celebrating. As afternoon gave way to evening, the festival lights twinkled on, and the community gathered in the square for dancing. Robert watched in amazement as Emma, the girl who had once thrown tantrums over health food, twirled happily with her new friend, her face flushed with exercise and joy. You were pretty impressive in there, Jennifer said, sidling up to him, channeling your corporate shark days for a good cause. I meant every word, Robert assured her. This place matters. What my grandfather started matters. I just wish I'd understood it sooner. Better late than never, Jennifer replied, leaning against him. She seemed about to say more when suddenly her expression changed. She pressed a hand to her chest, her face paling. Jenny? Robert's voice sharpened with concern. What's wrong? I don't know, she gasped. Feels like pressure. Can't catch my breath. Robert caught her as her knees buckled. Someone help. He called out, panic rising in his throat. My wife needs help. The music screeched to a halt as people rushed toward them. Sarah Cooper was the first to reach them, her nursing training immediately evident as she guided Jennifer to a sitting position. Get her legs elevated, Sarah instructed calmly. Someone call an ambulance. Emma pushed through the crowd, her blue ribbon still pinned to her shirt. Mom? Her voice was small, frightened. Mommy? It's okay, baby, Jennifer managed, though her breathing was labored. Just need to rest. As the wail of sirens approached, Robert held Jennifer's hand, his mind racing with fear. All the money in the world, all his business acumen, all his grand plans for the farm, none of it mattered if he lost her. The waiting room of Millfield Regional Hospital was a far cry from the sleek private medical facilities Robert had frequented in Seattle. Faded wallpaper from the early 2000s, chairs with worn upholstery, and a television quietly playing the local news created an atmosphere of workaday care rather than luxury. Yet in the 3 hours since Jennifer had been admitted, Robert had observed a level of personal attention that surprised him. Dr. Eleanor Howard, the cardiologist on call, knew Jennifer by name. They had spoken briefly at the farmer's market the previous weekend. The nurse who took Jennifer's vitals asked about Emma's blue ribbon at the festival. The elderly volunteer who brought Robert coffee remembered that he preferred it black. In Seattle, he had been fortunate to see the same doctor twice in a row. "Mr. Maxwell?" Dr. Howard approached, her expression reassuringly calm. "You can see your wife now." Robert followed her down the corridor, Emma's small hand clutched tightly in his. They had called the Coopers to pick her up, but Emma had flatly refused to leave, showing a determination that reminded Robert disconcertingly of himself. Jennifer was propped up in bed, looking pale but alert. An IV dripped fluids into her arm, and a monitor beeped steadily with her heart rhythm. "Hey, you two," she smiled weakly as they entered. "Sorry for the drama." Emma rushed to the bedside, stopping just short of launching herself at her mother. "Are you okay, Mom? Are you going to—" She couldn't finish the sentence, her lower lip trembling. "I'm going to be fine, sweetheart," Jennifer assured her, patting the edge of the bed. Emma carefully climbed up and nestled against her side. "The doctor says I just overdid it today." Robert exchanged glances with Dr. Howard, sensing there was more to the story. "Emma, honey, could you do me a huge favor? I think I saw a vending machine down the hall. There should be some change in my pocket. Could you find your mom a ginger ale? It always helps her feel better." Once Emma had reluctantly departed on her mission, Robert turned to Dr. Howard. "What's really going on?" "Jennifer's condition is called stress cardiomyopathy," the doctor explained. "It's sometimes called broken heart syndrome, because it often follows emotional or physical stress. Her heart has been weakened by chronic stress, and today's excitement, even though it was positive stress, triggered an episode." "Is she going to recover?" Robert asked, the question catching in his throat. "With proper management, yes," Dr. Howard assured him. "The tests show no permanent damage from today's episode. But," she added with professional directness, "this is a warning sign. Jennifer needs to make the lifestyle changes we discussed at her appointment last month. Stress reduction, moderate exercise, proper nutrition, and adequate rest." Jennifer reached for Robert's hand. "I was doing better at the farm. Today was just a lot. The festival, the excitement with Emma's pie, your announcement at the town hall." "My announcement," Robert repeated, guilt washing over him. "I should have discussed it with you first. I got caught up in the moment in the competition with Harrington." "It was a good idea," Jennifer countered. "It just came as a surprise, and then seeing Emma so happy with her ribbon, it was overwhelming. In a good way," she added hastily. "But apparently my heart needed a reminder to take things slowly." Dr. Howard made a note on her tablet. "I'm going to adjust your medication slightly. And I want to see you again in 2 weeks." She looked pointedly at Robert. "In the meantime, take it easy. Gentle walks, regular meals, early nights. No major projects or renovations or—" She consulted her notes with a small smile. "No launching agricultural cooperatives just yet." After the doctor left, Robert pulled a chair close to Jennifer's bedside, taking her hand in both of his. "I'm sorry, Jenny. I've been charging ahead like I always do, trying to fix everything at once." "It's who you are," Jennifer replied with a tired smile. "The man who sees problems and solves them, who builds things bigger than himself. It's what I fell in love with." Her expression grew more serious. "But sometimes, Robert, the most important things aren't the grandest or the most ambitious. Sometimes they're small moments like watching our daughter win a pie contest or sitting on the porch swing as the sun sets." Robert nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "I've been approaching the farm like another tech vision, haven't I? Another empire to build." "You've been doing what you know," Jennifer corrected gently, "and your heart is in the right place. The cooperative is a good idea. The community needs it, but maybe we can build it gradually, sustainably, like the way your grandfather farmed, thinking in seasons and years, not quarterly reports." Emma returned with the ginger ale, supervised by a nurse who helped her open it and place a straw for Jennifer. "The doctor says you can come home tomorrow, Mom," she reported. "And I'm going to take care of you. Mrs. Cooper is teaching me how to make chicken soup from scratch with real chicken and everything." Jennifer's eyes met Robert's over their daughter's head. "That sounds wonderful, sweetie." And I'll read to you, Emma continued earnestly. Lily's letting me borrow her favorite books. And when you're feeling better, we can go see the baby goats. One of them was just born yesterday, and Mrs. Cooper says I can help name it. Robert marveled at the transformation in his daughter. 3 months ago, her only interests had been her tablet, designer clothes, and fast food. Now she was excited about farm animals, cooking and reading, activities that involved neither screens nor shopping. That's very thoughtful, Emma, Jennifer said, smoothing her daughter's hair. But remember what the doctor said. Mom needs rest. I know, Emma replied solemnly. That's why Dad's going to handle the chores, and I'm going to be your special helper. Right, Dad? Absolutely, Robert agreed, though the truth was he still relied heavily on Nathan's guidance for farm operations. Team Maxwell is on the case. Later, after Emma had fallen asleep curled in an armchair, Robert and Jennifer talked quietly in the dimly lit hospital room. I got a call from Diane, Robert admitted, referring to his former executive assistant. TechVision's stock dropped 12% after the new management announced their third-quarter projections. Does that bother you? Jennifer asked. Robert considered the question honestly. Less than I would have expected. I built that company from nothing. It was everything to me for so long. But now... He looked at Emma's sleeping form, then back to Jennifer. Now it feels like a chapter that's closed. And what about this new chapter? The farm, the cooperative idea. Is it just a reaction, or is it something you really want? It started as a reaction, Robert acknowledged. A desperate move to save our family. But being there, learning about what my grandfather was trying to do, seeing how it's changed Emma, it feels right in a way that TechVision never quite did, even at its most successful. Jennifer squeezed his hand. Then we'll make it work, just slower than the Robert Maxwell standard timeline. They were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Sarah Cooper peeked in, holding a thermal container. Sorry to intrude. The nurses said it was okay to bring this up. Homemade bone broth. Better than anything from the hospital cafeteria. That's so kind, thank you, Jennifer said as Robert accepted the container. How are you feeling? Sarah asked, her nurse's assessment evident in her quick visual evaluation of Jennifer's color and demeanor. Better, Jennifer assured her. Just needed a reminder to pace myself. Sarah nodded understandingly. Farm life has its own rhythm. Takes time to adjust. She glanced at Emma, still sleeping soundly. Nathan's outside with Lily and Michael. They were worried. The whole town is, actually. You've made quite an impression. The whole town knows? Jennifer asked, embarrassed. Small community, Sarah reminded her with a gentle smile. But that's the good side of it too, people care. Mrs. Abernathy is organizing a meal train for when you get home. The Henderson boys have offered to handle your morning chores for the next week. That's really not necessary, Robert began. That's not how things work here, Sarah explained simply. When someone needs help, the community steps up. No questions, no expectations. Just neighbors being neighbors. After Sarah left, promising to take Emma back to the farm for a proper night's sleep, Robert considered her words. In Seattle, he had lived in an exclusive neighborhood for 7 years and couldn't have named a single neighbor. Here, after barely 3 months, strangers were organizing to bring meals to his family. It's different here, Jennifer murmured, reading his thoughts. This connection to people, to the land, it's what's been missing. Robert nodded, a sense of clarity washing over him. I've been thinking about Harrington's offer, and about my counter-proposal. What if neither approach is quite right? What do you mean? Harrington wants to turn farmland into a playground for the wealthy. I was proposing to turn it into a commercial organic cooperative. But what if there's a third way? Something that preserves the agricultural heritage while creating sustainable livelihoods for local families? Jennifer's eyes brightened with interest. Like what? I'm not sure yet, Robert admitted. But I think it starts with listening rather than announcing. With understanding what this community actually needs, not what I think it should have. That, Jennifer said with a smile, sounds like wisdom. The next morning, Jennifer was discharged with strict instructions to rest. As Robert helped her to the car, he was surprised to find Nathan waiting beside his truck. Thought you might want company on the drive home, Nathan offered. Roads can be tricky if you're distracted. The simple gesture of kindness, anticipating a need before it was expressed, struck Robert deeply. This was what community meant. Not grand announcements or charitable foundations, but small actions that acknowledged shared humanity. "Thank you," Robert said simply. "That would be appreciated." As they drove through the winding country roads, the autumn colors blazing on the hillsides, Robert found himself revising his vision for the future, not abandoning it, but reshaping it into something more organic, more connected to the rhythms of the land and the needs of the people who worked it. And for the first time in his adult life, he was content to let that vision develop slowly, one season at a time. 8 months to the day after Robert had come home early to find his family falling apart, the Maxwells gathered around their farmhouse kitchen table. Steam rose from a hearty vegetable soup made with ingredients they had grown themselves, accompanied by fresh-baked bread still warm from the oven. Through the window, the Vermont countryside was ablaze with spring colors, emerald fields, pink apple blossoms, and the vibrant blue sky that followed an afternoon rain shower. "Emma, would you like to do the honors?" Jennifer asked, gesturing to the bread. Emma, now 9 and noticeably taller than when they'd arrived, nodded solemnly. Using the bread knife with careful concentration, she cut 3 thick slices, handling each one with the respect Sarah Cooper had taught her to show for homemade food. "Perfect," Robert praised, accepting his slice. "You're becoming quite the baker." "Mrs. Wilson says I have good hands for it," Emma replied, referring to the elderly woman who had found her lost in the fields that first week, and who had subsequently become her unofficial baking mentor. "She's teaching me pie lattices next week." "Speaking of Mrs. Wilson," Jennifer said, "her granddaughter called today. Apparently the cooking video you and Lily made has over 50,000 views." Emma beamed with pride. "People really like learning about heritage apples. Lily's dad is going to help us build a better tripod for filming in the orchard." Robert marveled at the transformation in his daughter. The girl who had once thrown tantrums over natural sandwiches now eagerly explained the differences between apple varieties to her growing online audience. Her tablet was still part of her life, but as a creative tool rather than a passive entertainment device. "I've been thinking," Emma said between spoonfuls of soup, "about our summer project." "Which one?" Robert asked with a chuckle. Their list of projects had grown steadily over the winter months. "The educational one," Emma clarified. "I think we should invite kids from the city to visit the farm and learn about where food comes from. Like a camp, but for food." Jennifer and Robert exchanged glances. "That's actually a wonderful idea," Jennifer said. "There's a real disconnect between children and their food sources these days." "I was the same way," Emma admitted with the self-awareness that had emerged during their months on the farm. "I thought food just came from stores and restaurants. I didn't know how amazing it feels to eat something you helped grow." "We could start small," Robert mused, his mind already organizing logistics. "Maybe partner with schools in Burlington for day trips. The old dairy barn could be converted to a teaching kitchen. And we could use the heritage orchards for educational tours," Jennifer added. "Combine it with nutrition lessons." "Mom, you could teach those parts," Emma exclaimed. "You're the best at explaining why real food matters." Jennifer's eyes lit up. "I have been thinking about getting back into nutrition education. Maybe this is the right context for it." The conversation flowed naturally, each building on the other's ideas, creating something new together. Robert realized with a start that this was what he'd been seeking all along. Not just family togetherness, but creative collaboration. The same energy that had driven him to build Tech Vision was present here, but channeled into something that nourished his soul rather than merely his ambition. After dinner, as Emma went to call Lily about their plans, Robert and Jennifer stepped onto the porch. The evening air was cool but pleasant, fragrant with apple blossoms and the earthy scent of recently tilled soil. "I got an interesting call today," Jennifer said, settling beside Robert on the porch swing. "From Burlington Medical Center." Robert tensed slightly. Jennifer's health had stabilized over the past months, but he still worried. "Everything okay?" "More than okay," she assured him. "They're starting a community nutrition program focused on connecting local agriculture with preventative health care. They want me to consult on the project." "Jenny, that's perfect for you," Robert said, genuinely pleased. "Your nutrition background combined with what we've learned here on the farm." "It would be part-time," Jennifer continued. 2 days a week in Burlington." so I'd still have plenty of time for our family and farm projects. You should absolutely do it, Robert encouraged. If that's what you want. Jennifer smiled, leaning against him. 6 months ago, I wasn't sure I'd ever work again. Now I'm actually excited about it. It feels like coming full circle, but with new wisdom. Speaking of coming full circle, Robert said, I had a visitor of my own today. Gregory Harrington. Jennifer straightened. From Pinnacle Resorts. What did he want? Apparently, their eco-resort plans have been modified. Instead of buying up farmland, they're now proposing a smaller development on the old logging tract, with partnerships with local farms for farm-to-table dining experiences and agricultural tourism. That sounds suspiciously like what we've been developing here, Jennifer observed. Exactly, Robert agreed. But here's the interesting part. He wants to collaborate rather than compete. Pinnacle's guests would visit participating farms for educational experiences, while the farms retain their independence and agricultural production. What did you tell him? That I'd discuss it with my partners, you, the Coopers, and the dozen other farms that have joined our heritage cooperative. It's actually not a bad model. Their guests get authentic experiences. Local farms get additional income streams without selling their land, and the agricultural character of the region is preserved. The Robert Maxwell I married would have seen that as capitulation, Jennifer teased gently. The Robert Maxwell you married was more concerned with winning than with finding the right solution, he acknowledged. Besides, it was Emma's idea, really. Emma's? How so? Her concept of bringing city kids to learn about farming. It made me realize there's real value in education, in bridging the gap between urban and rural life. Harrington's guests aren't so different. They're just older and have more disposable income. Jennifer laughed softly. Out of the mouths of babes. The screen door creaked as Emma rejoined them, excitement evident in her flushed cheeks. Lily has so many ideas for our camp, and her mom says she can help with the nursing station, and Michael wants to teach a workshop on beekeeping, since his hives are doing so well, and... She paused, noticing her parents' amused expressions. What? Nothing, Robert assured her. We're just enjoying your enthusiasm. Emma plopped between them on the swing. It's going to be amazing. City kids will love it here just like I do. You really do love it here, don't you? Jennifer asked, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's forehead. Emma nodded emphatically. At first I thought it would be boring and gross, but it's actually the opposite. There's always something happening. Plants growing, animals being born, weather changing, everything. And the food tastes like it's supposed to taste. What about your friends back in Seattle? Robert asked. Do you miss them? Emma considered this. Sometimes. But I video chat with Amber every week, and I have Lily and Michael and the other kids from school here, and they like me for me, not because of our fancy house or my expensive stuff. The simple wisdom in her statement struck Robert deeply. His daughter had understood something it had taken him 45 years to grasp. That true connection came from shared experiences and values, not from status or possessions. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in vivid oranges and pinks, a truck came up the driveway. Nathan Cooper stepped out, followed by Sarah and their children. Hope we're not interrupting family time, Nathan called as they approached. Not at all, Robert assured him, rising to greet them. What brings you by? 2 things, Nathan replied. First, I wanted to let you know the irrigation system upgrade for the lower field is complete. Should reduce water usage by 30% this growing season. That's excellent news, Robert said, having funded the efficiency improvements as part of their cooperative agreement. Second, Sarah added, producing a folder from her bag, the educational non-profit paperwork came through. We're officially a 501c3. Any donations to the Heritage Agricultural Education Initiative are now tax-deductible. Perfect timing, Jennifer said. Emma was just explaining her vision for summer camps. As the adults discussed logistics, and Emma and Lily huddled over a notebook, sketching out their ideas, Robert found himself momentarily stepping back, observing the scene as if from a distance. Here, on the porch of his grandfather's farmhouse, 2 families were collaboratively building something meaningful, not just for themselves, but for the community, and potentially for children who would benefit from connecting with the land. He thought about the Robert Maxwell who had pulled into this driveway 8 months ago, stressed, disconnected, and believing that success was measured in stock prices and market share. That man would hardly recognize the life he now lived, rising with the sun, working with his hands, and falling into bed each night tired in body but nourished in spirit. Later, after the Coopers had left and Emma had gone to bed, Robert and Jennifer sat in the darkening living room, the only light coming from the embers in the wood stove. "I got another call today," Robert said quietly. "From Sylvia Chen." Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "Your former CFO? What did she want?" "Later, to offer me a job, actually. Tech Vision's new management team is struggling. The board is considering a leadership change and my name came up." "Oh." Jennifer was silent for a moment. "And what did you tell her?" "That I'm flattered but not interested." Robert reached for Jennifer's hand. She offered a compensation package that would have seemed irresistible a year ago: stock options, performance bonuses, private jet access. "And now? Now I know what those things actually cost." Robert gestured around them, at the simple farmhouse with its well-worn furniture and 100-year-old floors. "This isn't a picture-perfect life. The work is hard, the financial returns are modest compared to what we had, and there are days when I question whether I know what I'm doing." "But?" Jennifer prompted, hearing the unspoken qualification in his voice. "But I've never been more certain that I'm where I'm supposed to be, doing what matters most. Watching Emma flourish, seeing your health improve, feeling connected to this land and this community, it's worth more than any corporate success." Jennifer moved closer, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you remember what the doctor called my heart condition? Broken heart syndrome. I think in some ways we were all suffering from it in Seattle. Hearts broken by disconnection, by chasing the wrong things, by forgetting what truly nourishes us." "And now?" Robert asked softly. "Now I think we're healing. All of us together." Through the open window came the sounds of their new life: spring peepers chorusing from the pond, the distant lowing of a neighbor's cow, the rustle of wind through the ancient maple trees that lined the driveway. Simple sounds, ordinary to those who had always lived with them, but to the Maxwells they were the music of redemption. In the morning, there would be chores to do, plans to make, challenges to face. The Heritage Agricultural Education Initiative would need curriculum development. The cooperative would face negotiations with Pinnacle Resorts. Jennifer's new position would require adjustments to their family schedule. But for now, in this moment, Robert Maxwell, former tech CEO, reluctant farmer, work in progress, was exactly where he needed to be. Not running from his past or chasing his future, but fully present in a life he was building one day at a time, one choice at a time, one season at a time. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the same stars that had guided his grandfather as he worked this land decades ago. Robert wondered if the old man somehow knew that his legacy had finally come full circle, not in the ways he might have expected, but in the ways that mattered most. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" Jennifer asked, the question more statement than inquiry. Robert pulled her closer. "More than okay. We're going to be exactly who we're meant to be." Fimda Historia. Dear listeners, we hope the story of the Maxwell family's transformation has touched your heart. For more emotionally captivating journeys like this one, we've prepared a special playlist of equally moving stories. You'll find it by clicking the link to your left. If you enjoyed this tale of rediscovery and reconnection, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore life's complexities and profound moments of change. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're excited to share more journeys with you. We look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments below.